Now, historic York is one of the most desirable places to live in the country, but there are real concerns that cuts to housing benefits could see some people on low incomes unable to afford to rent in the city. Already, council house waiting lists are swelling and some homeless charities are struggling to keep up with demand. Danny Hewson has been to meet some of the people who may be priced out of the market.
Crowned Britain's most beautiful city, the place we'd most like to live. But is York rapidly becoming off limits to people on low incomes or benefits?
It's either find some alternative place to stay in or I can't pay the rent.
We seem to be doing the opposite of creating a stable family home, and I think there are just consequences that will follow from that.
So theoretically you could end up with 4 of you in here?
Yeah.
Here in the city of York, the concept of social housing began. In the 10th century, King Athelstan donated money to build the country's first almshouse, close to where York Minster now stands. The aim to provide residence for what he called poor, distressed folk.
Anything here? Pasta? Yeah.
Naomi Dawkins could be described as poor.
You've got to count it out even before you get it. I've got to, know what I'm got coming in, know what I've got coming out, know my limit to what I can spend on food.
And it's getting worse. Her housing benefit has never fully covered the rent on the flat she lives in with her daughter. But from April, she'll get £32 a month less from the state. Since she has just £200 to live on after rent and utilities, Naomi knows she won't be able to manage, and she's having to move out.
I can't be there. I just can't afford to be there. I'm struggling as it is because it's so high. When I was trying to find where I am now, that was one of the cheapest, but that's expensive. So trying to find somewhere cheaper, well, I don't know where you can find somewhere cheaper.
The changes to housing benefits are hitting people in York harder than almost anywhere else in the country outside of London. Here the amount available is less than in Leeds and Harrogate. The maths are complicated, but effectively it means finding somewhere affordable in York is like looking for a needle in a haystack.
If we were looking for something on the new levels of housing benefits, so for a 2-bedroom we're looking around £500 a calendar month in York, could I get a house for that?
It'd be very, very difficult. The only thing we've got even close to that at the moment is a house on Lehman Road, which is £515 a month for a 2-bedroom Victorian terrace. In poorish order, I have to say. The market here in York almost starts at around £600 a month, and that's for a 1-bedroom apartment.
Why do you think that rents are so high in York at the moment?
It's really been down to the last 2 or 3 years, as more people have been unable to buy because they can't get their deposits together, and perhaps they've moved up from outside the area and unable to sell their own property. They've rented instead, and that's put increased demand on the rental market.
And as more and more people like Naomi find themselves unable to afford private rents in York, the waiting list for social housing is swelling. And it's not just people who are unemployed. Cllr and her husband both work. They live in a council house, but it's too small for their 5 children, especially as they have another baby on the way.
So this is the master?
This is the master room.
So it's currently...
There's myself, my husband, Charlie, and then obviously I have got room for a Moses basket, but obviously not for another cot.
So theoretically you could end up with 4 of you in here?
Yeah.
Cllr, her husband, and soon-to-be 6 children ranging from 19 to newborn will all squeeze into this small 3-bedroom house. They need something bigger, but they've been looking since last summer, along with thousands of others. It seems an impossible situation, but renting privately isn't an option.
Looking on the rents at the moment in York, for private sector, you're talking over £1,000 a month. My husband doesn't even earn that a month, so we wouldn't be able to do it.
The government wants people to live where they can afford to live. But for Cllr and her family, that would mean leaving behind precious jobs at a time when work is hard to come by, effectively adding 2 more people to the unemployment line.
It's not even on the equation to move out of York. I need my job to be able to provide for my kids, and my husband works in and around York and covers a wide area, so we need to be in York to be able to provide for a roof over our heads.
The Chartered Institute of Housing says within a generation some towns and cities will simply be off limits to those on lower incomes. Without its low-paid workers, York would grind to a halt. Tills wouldn't be manned, bars wouldn't be serving, and pavements wouldn't be gritted.
It's a prospect that's already causing concern at council level.
What we're going to have then is we're going to have a whole area of employment in York where we will find it difficult to fill those vacancies, because even if you move out to some of the cheaper towns that surround York, you've then got transport costs, and as we all know, bus fares aren't cheap, petrol is going up all the time.
Tracey Simpson-Laing is responsible for housing in York. I meet up with her at one of the last remaining council estates in the city.
The difficulty we have now is the government are still promoting the right to buy scheme, but they're now saying that they want to give people even larger discounts. And the issue is on there, they're saying with the money we'll be able to build one for everyone sold. But we're going to get such a small amount back. We're going to get about £22,000 back. You can't buy land and build a house for £22,000. You can't even build a flat for £22,000. So they're saying that they're putting initiatives in place to help us, and it's doing exactly the opposite.
More, cheaper homes are needed. At Derwentthorpe, on the outskirts of York, that is happening. The Joseph Rowntree model will see 40% of the new builds here up for rent at affordable levels. But this build's not been cheap, and is a drop in the ocean.
There's an argument that says forget the standards, just build cheap and in bulk. But we've done that in the past. There are estates all over the country, and I've managed quite a few of them, where cheap and cheerful was used, and those are the estates that are being torn down. Those are the estates that are costing us a fortune in terms of renovation and modernisation now.
It's about building reasonable homes at reasonable prices, but it's only possible because a charity is involved.
If we increase the rents, we know that we will effectively be reducing access to those people who are working, and bizarrely making them only places where people on full benefits can actually afford. And once they're there, they'll be paying much higher rents and therefore won't be able to get off benefits.
And that's the trap Naomi's in. Forced to give up her job because of spiralling childcare costs, she's stuck claiming benefits until Caitlin starts school. She's now waiting to find out if she can get a council house, otherwise she'll be forced to move back in with her parents.
It is quite embarrassing because, you know, you are taking money from the state and you are claiming benefits, and I don't like seeing myself as that type of person.
It's a national dilemma, but one that's come to a head in York. The government's trying to solve it by cutting benefits and forcing down private rents. But with demand so high, achieving this seems impossible, and many more people will find themselves out of their homes, on waiting lists and on the streets before the balance is found.